Hello, this is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Thank you so much for joining us, and of course, thank you, Mozart, for starting us off so beautifully. Today, we are going to be continuing our theme of looking at how spiritual values and an awakened mind interfaces with the world at large, the so-called material world, the mainstream world in which we live and breathe and eat every day, in which we prosper, in which we fall on our faces, you know, that world. How can our spiritual awareness, awakening, and mindfulness interface in a way that can actually shift this world to, you could say, a higher vibration, a greater sense of resonance with all things? Because this, it seems, we are called upon to do in order for us to move our society to a more transformed state of mind, state of heart, and a state of being. And in order to explore that subject today, we have invited on a really lovely and well-known spiritual teacher, cultural visionary, and founder of the nonprofit Enlighten Next and its wonderful award-winning publication known as Enlighten Next magazine, Andrew Cohen. Andrew has been around teaching on the circuit, literally globetrotting, for the past, I'd say, 14, my gosh, it could be, 25, 27 years. And he has gotten to be quite familiar with some very wonderful, notable people, such as Ken Wilber, such as Deepak Chopra, Don Beck, a whole host of real movers and shakers in our world on intellectual, spiritual levels, and moving our culture forward in a direction that I was speaking about at the beginning of this hour. We're going to be focusing with Andrew on his book, Evolutionary Enlightenment, A New Path to Spiritual Awakening, that has just some commendations, some comments that are just extraordinary from people, like some of whom I've already mentioned, Marilyn Schlitz, Michael Murphy, Barbara Marx Hubbard, who we've had on the show, same with Gene Houston. Really, really lovely things, and Andrew really being acknowledged as being a teacher in his own right of real merit. So it's really a pleasure to have Andrew joining us today to talk about this book. Andrew, are you on the line? Are you on the line, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, here you are. Wonderful. Welcome to A Better World.
I'm looking forward to this.
Isn't that a wonderful title? I mean, it seems like it goes really very compatibly with your notions in evolutionary enlightenment.
Well, all spiritually motivated people are inspired to make the world a better place. That's the amazing and marvelous thing about the spiritual impulse in human beings is that, in fact, as I like to call it, I call the spiritual impulse the evolutionary impulse, or the creative force, in the cosmos, the same energy and intelligence that created the universe and is creating it. So all spiritually motivated people, knowingly or unknowingly, are awake to that impulse and definitely want to make the world a better place.
Exactly. It's very much a spiritual, and I really like to keep it grounded and say it's a heart impulse, It's something from a very deep resonance inside our hearts that really want us to share, to give, to receive as well. But it's very much to connect on a heart level, a deep level with other people. You use the word in evolutionary, which has become rather cachet today. Many people like that word, Barbara Marx Hubbard and many others out on the West Coast and everywhere, actually. But as I've been reading your book, Andrew, it occurs to me that the word is basically interchangeable with the word that we used to use a lot of growth, that there's this impulse to grow, to expand, to develop. Would that match your understanding?
I think that is a fabulous comparison, that evolution is about growth. But we just want to put it in the context that evolution is happening everywhere on all of the fundamental dimensions of being or existence, and when we actually see that, that is so exciting. And so what that means is that we recognize that we're all part of a cosmic process. You know, the universe came into being 14 billion years ago and has been that's when time and space emerged, and that gave rise to a developmental process. So the cosmos is in a state of becoming, growing, is the word you use. And then we realize that out of this cosmic unfolding, you know, through the miracle of emergence, you know, from the energy, from this emergence of energy and matter, there was this dramatic appearance of life. So from energy and matter, life appeared, and then we have the evolution of biological life. So there's the evolution of the cosmos, which gave rise to biological life, and then we have the evolution of life, and then from life, mind, or the emergence of human culture, right? So when you realize that the cosmos, the material cosmos, the biological life, and the emergence of mind or culture are all part of one process, so that the evolving cosmos gave rise to the evolution, the emergence and evolution of life, which gave rise to the emergence and evolution of mind. And when you realize that cosmos, life, and mind are part of one unfolding process, that you are and I am an inherent, inseparable part of that one process that's going somewhere, you know, it's quite mind-expanding. And when you also connect that to the fact that when you or I experience or awaken to a spiritual impulse, a spiritual motivation, an evolutionary motivation, which is the felt desire to become more conscious, I feel compelled that I have to become more conscious. You realize it's the same energy and intelligence that gave rise to the material universe, the same energy and intelligence that gave rise to the biological universe.
To life itself.
To energy and intelligence gave rise to mind and culture, that we're experiencing, that is trying to awaken and evolve, and to use your word, grow through us. That's very exciting.
Exactly. You know, you remind me, Andrew, of a talk I attended of the, as they refer to him as penseur extraordinaire, Terence McKenna of the 20th century, who in many ways replaced and went beyond, I think, Timothy Leary, who wrote a book with Rupert Sheldrake, the famous British biologist responsible for promoting the notion of morphogenetic fields. When in this workshop, Andrew, Terence, who was regarded very much as a teacher and an icon in his day, was asked, Terence, what is God? And he answered with one word, and he said, biology. I just thought that was completely brilliant. You know? It's basically talking about the manifest world, you know.
Well, yeah, because I don't think, you know, with all due respect to Mr. McKenna, I don't think that biology is enough, because I would say the answer to that question would be the evolution, because if evolution includes the material cosmos, the biological life, and mind and culture, then we're talking about everything. And I think if we're going to use such a big word like God would have to mean everything, right? And not only everything, but that which is that force, that the eros, that driving, the force that's driving everything to become more of itself.
For people who knew him, knew he was being slightly tongue-in-cheek, and you could almost say linguistically conniving, because he just had a way of including much. I mean, in a sense, it was almost like him saying creation. But knowing behind creation is what you very elegantly discuss in your book, the non-manifest, the invisible world that coexists with the manifest, and from which the manifest world arrives and derives. You know.
Exactly.
So, I'd love to go into a little of the body of your meaning in the book. I mean, what do you feel is like one of the critical points. Clearly, you just made several very fine points of you could say, our evolution and the impulse behind it that we as humans experience, and its origin in the Big Bang and all of that. What is, once somebody kind of gets the flow of that notion and they find themselves in the world on their feet regarding the culture that we have created, which has, of course, so many beautiful artistic creations, and it has so many very divisive, conflicted manifestations, such as what we see in the world of politics, what we see in the world of business, what we see in the world of human emotion, jealousy, envy, greed, ego, power. How do you advise your students to walk wisely on this path?
The first thing, one thing I'd like to say one thing that a lot of people don't really know is that in spite of all the enormous challenges we're facing, in terms of the environment, in terms of the war and conflict that still exists in the world, and the inequity that still is pervasive and unacceptable, and also including a lot of the very real and frustrating problems we're having with our own American political system. Things are so much better for so many more people than they ever have been in the history of the human experiment, and so most people don't know that in terms of people that the more people have access to a higher standard of living, to education, to running water, to toilets, to food, to opportunities. The world that we live in we can't compare it to the way the world was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. I mean, things are so much better, and things are getting better in spite of the fact that we're facing a lot of real challenges. And I say this with respect and also with inspiration that Steven Pinker from MIT just released this tome, which was documenting how violence, human on human,
I'm familiar with the study,
has decreased in the most profound and remarkable way. And if the decrease in violence, in spite of the fact that our population has quintupled and beyond that, I mean it's a sign. So I think that it's important that we begin to include the good news, which is that things are getting better. It's not to deny in any way that we have real challenges that we need to come to terms with, but what nobody knows is that things are getting better for more and more people all the time, and it's just simply true.
I think that's a good point, and because
if it's true,
we would have to bear down, Andrew, on what we define as better, and running water has its pluses, but if a company like Bechtel is going to attach a fee to the water running in Bolivia, for instance, we want to maybe look twice at the value of running water.
We have a long way to go, and corruption and ill will and nefarious purposes are still inherent and endemic in the human condition. But there's a larger point, which is that things are getting better and are a lot better for more people than they ever were, and they're continuing to improve. And so what I'm saying is this is a revolutionary point, because most people don't know that, because the speed that information is passing these days is so quick that all we hear about is everything that's going wrong, which tends to give us a warped perspective on reality.
That's a good point. I remember Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, that few people seem to remember these days, but is largely responsible for importing Tibetan Buddhism to both Europe and America, said, just the invention to the Tibetans of the fork was a major evolutionary step.
I remember,
I think that's helping to illustrate your point.
No, it is. But I remember the one time I saw the great Rinpoche, Chogyam Trungpa, I saw him give a speech in New York, and I remember in those days, this was the end of the 70s, beginning, and he said, because that was the time when I'm sure you remember, we were all worried about nuclear war.
Sure.
We were all desperately afraid, and he basically
I still am.
Well, but
yeah.
but the Rinpoche declared in front of the audience, the packed theater. He said, everybody's worried. He said, do not worry about it. He said, we're not going to do that. He said, we're not that stupid. And there was something, I was terrified at the time, and I remember he said it with such utter confidence that I found it's stunning. I said, how could he possibly be so sure? But he said it he made the statement with such utter confidence that he forced everybody to listen and to consider the inconceivable. And guess what?
Yeah.
So far he's been right.
Right.
Because
I
the way we were thinking,
him for that.
Yeah, the way we were thinking in those days is that kind of nuclear annihilation, some kind of nuclear catastrophe was inevitable. But remarkably, since the last great world conflagration of World War II, there hasn't been any kind of conflict anywhere near that scale.
Correct.
Correct. So this is something that personally I've been thinking about quite a bit, and the reason that this is important because if it's true that generally things are getting better, in spite of the fact that we have very real problems we have to face. We have some reason to feel good about ourselves. It doesn't mean we're out of the woods or that we don't have we don't have a lot we have to change and deal with. And
I agree with that.
We still have to fight the good fight. But I think knowing that things are generally improving in spite of all these challenges for more and more people is something worth internalizing.
I think it's worth noting, and I think that I take issue with Pinker's whole premise, by the way, because I think that what has happened is it could be that physical military violence has decreased historically, but I say that violence has utterly increased, but it has become more subtle. It's become more in the domain of language, advertising, PR. There are many other environmental assaults on us that are, to me, all acts of violence. GMOs in our food. You see what I mean? It just has taken different forms. But the level of violence, I personally think, has actually increased over time with more new, clever, innovative ways to perpetuate it. Look,
if we had more time, if we had,
yeah, we could discuss that.
If we had more time, I would argue my point more passionately and more vigorously. But I want to say for the record, and I say this with much respect, I completely disagree.
Yeah.
But anyway, that doesn't matter.
That's okay. Yeah, we'll get to that another time. Nonetheless, I think I agree with your point that we have a lot to be happy about, and I wholly agree with that. I think the entire human design is utterly amazing and miraculous, and there's so much to actually celebrate, which is, I think, why my heart has broken and does break so much in the face of the issues that we are facing. What I'd like to know from you, Andrew, is how is it that you kind of guide your students when facing with the miracle of what and who we are on the most sublime level with the material manifestations of our conflicts, and how do you help your students deal with the reality of the world?
Right. So, and this is something I noticed also when you were speaking earlier in the show and you gave your introduction. You see, I don't see the quote unquote material world as existing out there somewhere. That when we deeply awaken, we realize that we're part of one unfolding process. Okay.
Yes.
So the material world is not somehow separate from some kind of spiritual realm or spiritual domain or spiritual dimension. The quote-unquote material world is an inherent part of the world, and if we realize that we're part of one process, that energy and that energy and light and matter gave rise to life, which gave rise to culture and mind and interiority, and the capacity to awaken to deep interiority, which is spirit, we kind of realize it's all one, and the ultimate nature of the world, of the universe, is inherently a spiritual process. That what's driving, there's an energy and intelligence that gave rise to the material universe, that gave rise to life and mind and culture and deep interiority. That the nature of that energy and intelligence is spirit itself. So when we see it from that point of view, it's all spirit in action. So therefore, everything is spirit in action, and so therefore, from that perspective, the very real challenges that you or I or any of your listeners or any human being face in our lives are all an inherent part of a spiritual process. And so all the challenges we face,
yes.
from the mundane to really profound challenges, are all part of one event. And the world is, when you begin to see what it is, the world out there and the world in here are one, and it's all spirit, unfolding.
Yes, we agree completely. I really positioned it that way because many people tend to look at the life of the spirit in some kind of old monastic format, that internally I live a life of bliss and I am one with the divine. And then there is this classical Indian notion of the dirt bag, so to speak, the physical body, the physical domain. I much more appreciate what you're saying as essentially one continuum, which is the way I look at it. But
no, exactly.
Right.
And I mean,
how do we look at this in an integrated way? In other words, how can we take our spiritual awareness, Andrew, and bring it, kind of plow it into the upgrade of our world?
Well, I think the way we want to understand it, that what we call spirit is primordial. What the Buddha called the primordial spirit. The birthless and the deathless, the uncreated
sure.
and the unborn. So we can understand that the material universe emerged from timeless, formless emptiness. And that timeless, formless emptiness is the deepest part of the self, and it's the deepest part of reality itself. So out of that timeless, formless emptiness, or no-thingness, right, there, the desire, I interpret the creative process, all of manifestation, as a desire to exist. There's the evolutionary impulse or drive in the universe we can reasonably interpret as and understand as a drive to exist in time and in space and in form. And then as life, as life, and then ultimately as sentient life, as mind, and ultimately as self-reflective awareness. So I think that the traditional mysticism, the traditional view of enlightenment, is a transcendent one. It's one where we reject the body. We reject the world. We reject time, and space, and form, in order to transcend all of that, in order to experience freedom from the world. That enlightenment or spiritual freedom is the freedom from. But then there was, especially for example in Buddhism, there was the Mahayana revolution, and the Mahayanists realized that form and emptiness, right, the world of manifestation, and the realm of the unmanifest, are one and not two. And we understand that when we look at cosmic evolution, because energy, light, and matter emerged from that primordial emptiness. So we say form and emptiness are one and not two. And then we realize that the world of form, the world of manifestation, is evolving, is going somewhere, and the drive to go somewhere is that evolutionary impulse, that evolutionary motive in the universe, which is the urge towards greater complexity. So when you realize that form is emptiness and emptiness is form, and the world of form is going somewhere new, and that my desire to evolve and your desire to evolve is the manifestation and pulsation of God, or the energy and intelligence that created the universe, it awakens in us a desire to want to be here in the world, in our body, as creative engines. Yes,
exactly. Beautifully put. I would like to kind of come full circle to something that just occurred to me. Now, we've only got about a minute or two left, but I would like to ask you this final question. I'd like to let you tell people that you are going to be in New York City giving a workshop this coming Saturday, and that would be April 14th, correct?
I'm teaching in April 14th for a half day from 1 till 5. And if anybody's interested in details, they can go to my website at andrewcohen.org.
Excellent, excellent. I want to ask one last question of you this time, and surely we'll have to have you on again and go further.
We're just getting warmed up.
I know. Oh, engines are moving. All of this interesting Jewish, Buddhist, spiritual energy going, you know? I think we're from the same tribe, you know?
Same tribe.
Talking about that tribe, we have another one of our tribe members, Sensei Glassman, who the Riverside Zen Center, who many years ago got the inspiration, talking about inspiration, to go up to Yonkers and start a bakery in the worst part of town. It's gotten so successful, they've passed it on to the local people there, and it's been on 60 Minutes, one of the best-watched shows on the planet. I was wondering if there was anything in your group, you have students all over the world, that manifest in the manifest world that impulse toward sharing and that level of, how do you say, generosity of soul, that Mahayana spirit, that it all looks in its own way sort of parallel to what Sensei Glassman did there up in the bakery.
Well, I have some students that are doing work in Africa, trying to bring stoves that have a completely different kind of fuel that doesn't create pollution.
Oh, the solar stoves?
Yeah, that could change the lives of countless people. I have other of my students that are very interested in the evolution of women's consciousness, because they're in the women's movement. There's a lot of people stuck, and one of my students just wrote a book about this. Carter Phipps, a close student, a colleague of mine, wrote a book that's coming out this summer by Harper Perennial about the significance of people who embrace an evolutionary worldview. I have students in Germany that are doing wonderful work. I mean, my students all over the world are really turned on, very inspired people that really do want to make the world a better place. And that
wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. That's beautiful. That's very heartening, Andrew, and I really appreciate it. And the good work you're doing, and Enlighten Next is a magazine I think is fabulous. And I really need to submit a few articles from A Better and about A Better World to you for it. I really, really think well of it in your work. So thank you for being our guest today.
It's been my pleasure. And if you and I are going to really talk together, we need at least an hour where we can really wrestle each other a little bit more.
Exactly. In classic Talmudic form.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful.
Exactly.
God bless you. Thanks again. I really appreciate it, Andrew.
Lots of love.
Lots of love. Bye-bye now. Andrew Cohen, the author of Evolutionary Enlightenment, A New Path to Spiritual Awakening. Good work, with foreword by Deepak Chopra, and just really enlivening, inspiring material. He's really put together a fine book and is doing great work across the planet. This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. I'm so glad you joined us again today. Thank you so much for tuning in to these ideas that are really about creating a better world. Visit us at our website at www.abetterworld.tv, abetterworld.tv, and get on our newsletter if you're not getting it already, and learn about the Monday night show on Progressive Radio Network and the TV show every Tuesday night as well. Thanks again for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.